Derek Stewart here speaking from the DC Stewart Show podcast, and I am your host. Tonight, along with my co-host Isaiah, it is a Monday night, and currently Monday Night Football is on with the LA Chargers versus the Baltimore Ravens. And guess what? Two brothers are coaching against each other. They made history once again because they did coach against each other in a Super Bowl when Jim Harbaugh, who's a brother of John Harbaugh, was coaching for the San Francisco 49ers, and John Harbaugh has been with the Baltimore Ravens forever. So I just wanted to mention that this is Monday Night Football, and we're kind of in the last phases of football going into December before the playoffs start. Wanted to go around and say subscribe, and hit that like button if you like what we're doing. Let me introduce you to my host, Isaiah, who is here tonight, co-host. And what is really going on, Isaiah? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I had a beautiful day today, man. It was marvelous. I'm getting prepared for the holidays this week and Thanksgiving, and I'm anticipating some good sports being played. You got the Dolphins playing on Thanksgiving night, and then you got my Hurricanes playing during the weekend. So, man, I'm looking forward to the weekend and enjoying it with some family and friends. And, people who I hadn't seen in a while. I want to eat some sweet potato pie, some turkey and some ham and some collard greens, not out the can. I don't do them things out the can.
Why not?
Nah, they not right. I want them fresh. I don't want nothing but sitting on the counter and the table and the shelf for months. I want some fresh out the garden, fresh.
I hear you.
A little turkey cut up in them things, little neck bones. Boy, we gonna do it right.
Yeah, you're making me jealous.
Something? Don't be jealous. Just go out and get you some yourself. Can't be
Well,
jealous.
I'm going to get the can because the can has been good to me. Canned collard greens has been good to me. So I can't complain about that.
Boy, you don't know what
Instead
you
of cooking them from
man.
scratch.
You don't know what you miss, man. You got to go out there in the hood. I know they got some places in the hood in LA.
For sure. Oh, for sure.
With that.
I can go over into Inglewood or South Los Angeles and find some good home cooked collard greens.
Well,
and a multitude of places. So there ain't no problem with that. And I might just do it going into the weekend.
I'll do it. Treat yourself, man.
Absolutely.
Don't get nothing
One thing I do want to mention is to our viewers, we want you, the viewer, to enjoy a really nice Thanksgiving this coming week. Thanksgiving is a couple of days away, as a matter of fact, and we hope you can get together with your family and friends and people who mean the most to you, and make sure that you are safe and they are safe and everybody can get together and reminisce and talk about the good times and talk about the future and even some of the past. So just wanted to get that out there before we get started. It was a sports-packed weekend starting on Saturday, and we covered a lot, Isaiah and myself, from yesterday, because we did have a show yesterday talking about college football and dabbled in a little bit of pro football in there. College is really, to me and Isaiah, really, it's a passionate thing for us because, when these kids, when they come up and they grow up and aspire to be somebody, a lot of them aspire to be professional athletes. We grew up around children like that. We grew up around young men who wanted to become somebody and take their family and catapult their family up out of poverty and into a better life and into a good life, creating generational wealth and those type of things. So college football is a little bit different in my perspective than pro, because the pros are already under contract and they're making money. And college is under NIL, but it's still nothing close to what a pro contract, transforms into. So I will get started, and I want to get started with a game from yesterday, especially the Miami Dolphins against the New England Patriots. Looks like New England's coach, Jerrod Mayo, and Jerrod used to play linebacker for New England. He was a first-round draft pick out of Tennessee in 2000. Very good player. I mean, I thought he was a fairly good player. He played inside linebacker. During his career, he had 537 career solo tackles, 11 sacks, and 3 interceptions. And Jerrod was quite a player because he was part of an organization and part of a team which was coached under Bill Belichick. They ran a dynasty at New England at that time. And he just happened to come along at a time where he was able to enjoy that success of that dynasty. So fast forward to today, early 2024, Bill Belichick steps aside, and Bob Kraft, who is a very classy guy, Bob Kraft is a very classy individual, runs a great organization, a successful businessman. I have a world of respect for Bob Kraft. Bob Kraft hired Jerrod Mayo as the head coach of the New England Patriots. At the time, there was questions about that because Jerrod was an assistant coach. He was a position coach. He was an inside linebackers coach, and then he became just a linebackers coach as of 2023. So before he got this job, he was technically a position coach. And a lot of people were asking, was he ready? Obviously, it looks like he's struggling right now. And he's struggling at 3-9. And he actually commented yesterday during his press conference. And he commented to the point because New England got pretty much manhandled by Miami. Miami was able to go in, dominate New England in all phases of the game, from the offense, defense, and special teams aspect. Jerrod's quote was, look, once those guys cross the white lines, there's nothing I can do for them. A lot of people had issues with that particular comment. So I'm going to ask Isaah. Isaah, do you have any issue with the first-year head coach who basically said that told his players, look, I can't help you if you don't follow what we teach you? I mean, what's your takeaway and what's your take on that?
Well, I think that comment should have been kept himself. You don't tell your players that, man. That's why he only won 3 games. And he probably won those by mistake. You can't tell your players that. You got to motivate your players and inspire your players. But you saying stuff like that, you take the pride out of them. You take so much out of them. You know, the foolishness set in when you say something like that because you don't sound like a serious coach. Because real good coaches who know how to play that mind game, because that's what it really is with players, to make them play at their highest potential. You make those guys think that they can do it, you know, and that starts actually in practice. You don't have to give them, you know, that motivation during the game time. I mean, if they screw up, jump off sides because they agitated and they just not in their zone yet, you do that in practice, man. You get these guys pumped up, they ready to go. And for him to make a comment like that is almost as if he ain't really confident in himself. So as a first-time head coach, I respect the fact that, you know, the owner, Bob Kraft, gave him an opportunity to be able to take over a program like that. Just leaving off of a legacy type of, you know, years, having all of the success that they had, and to bring a guy like that to take the helm, you know, when Belichick left. And I don't ever, you know, I couldn't imagine Belichick saying that to his players, man. So he better find another route to motivate those kids and saying stuff like that. In my opinion, I just think those are the wrong type of comments to make to players.
Makes me wonder that he's trying to talk his way out of a job. He's trying to get fired. That's what it makes me think, because anytime you say something like that, you're basically telling your players, you're telling the front office, you're telling Bob Kraft and Jonathan Kraft that, look, I'm in over my head. That's what I perceived and took from his comment. Now, Bob Kraft handed this man the keys to a multi-billion-dollar business, at least a phase of a multi-billion-dollar business. And he entrusted him with the keys to this business because he felt confident that Jerrod would be able to step in, take a leadership role, and be able to galvanize these players to follow him and to play at their best, to be able to get the best out of these players, to be able to push the buttons when he needs to be able to pull back when he needs to, whenever he needs to press the button again. You have to really get good at that. And I'm not saying that he might not get good at it, because this is his first year and he might be given another year. Well, there's a possibility he might not, because of what has transpired in New England with the team. And, the fan base is complaining, the Boston media is complaining. And to me, he just didn't learn. Mike Tomlin should be teaching a course on what to say at a press conference. And Mike Tomlin, who was the Pittsburgh Steelers coach for almost 18 years, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll backtrack and backcheck that. But Mike Tomlin has been able to maintain leadership and stay on the course and stay the course for that amount of time. And I've never known him to make a comment where the Pittsburgh media just all of a sudden just jumped out, and the fan base and the media is outraged at what he said. They need to take a chapter out of Mike Tomlin's book and learn how to talk to the media, because obviously Jerrod Mayo doesn't have any experience doing that. Wouldn't you say so?
It sounds definitely like that's the case. And you really gotta almost practice what you say to the media, because once it comes out, you can't reverse it. And then your players get a chance to hear that stuff. Even if they wasn't there during that press conference, they can hear it, and then that resonate with them, and they say, man, this guy, it's this, I mean, it could make this guy lose the locker room altogether, and that's when he'll have to step away from the game. He might be over his head, man, and he's trying to show you that he's over his head. He might need to go back to being a position coach, because you got to have a certain amount of grit and grind and all of that stuff combined with, being a head coach, because you gotta manage everybody. You got to manage even your staff, your players, the locker room as a whole. You got to manage that stuff. And the mere fact that you can say something like that to almost marginalize your players because they didn't get it. You got to constantly be those guys who's almost got a whip out and spanking these guys and get them going. But all of that happens in practice,
Absolutely.
That happens in practice. These guys know you're a no-nonsense type of coach. You won't have to say anything like that. So, and it's probably these little bits and bruises that you'll take even as a young coach. So I'll just give him the benefit of the doubt right now. He misspoke. He shouldn't have said it, even if, he might have just had that on his mind, but really don't mean it. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He'll get a hall pass on this one, but it can't keep coming out. Stuff like that can't be a mistake. I just want to see him turn the team around. He got hired for the job, and let's see how he can build the program back up.
Yes, yeah. And he might also want to give Dan Campbell for the Detroit Lions a call and say, Coach Campbell, look, help me out, brother. Help me out. Help me out, because Dan Campbell, to me, is one of the best coaches in the NFL right now, and he was one of the best coaches when they hired Dan Campbell back at the time that they hired him in Detroit. He started out pretty much 0-13 and 1. I think they tied Pittsburgh that year. And you never heard Dan Campbell at a press conference say something like Jerrod Mayo said. Dan Campbell always said, look, we're going to claw, we're going to gouge, we're going to do whatever we take to make this team better, to build around what we have talent-wise. And Dan Campbell and his staff have done a fantastic job. And he's one of my favorite coaches. And one of the reasons why is he's a lunch pail type of coach. I mean, he's the hard hat type of guy that come to work and he tell his players, look, you do this, we work and do this, we'll see some good gains on the back end. It may be tough at the beginning, but Jerrod Mayo might want to reach out, to some of his peers and say, look, this is what I'm dealing with, because that's what they're there for. I mean, if you look at the 32 coaches in the NFL, I'm pretty sure they interact at some point where you call someone and say, look, I might need some pointers here or need some pointers there. Or a lot of coaches are maybe too proud to do that, but I would highly advise him to do that, because He's really damaging a perfect opportunity for him to take a franchise that's been a very successful franchise. Now it's down, and he could pick it back up and make it at least respectable again. I think that's going to be really important.
Let me ask you something. Is he
sure.
the GM? He's the GM also?
No, he is not.
He the GM?
He is not the GM, no. Belichick was the last GM at New England. He was a coach GM, and let me find out who the GM is at New England. I don't think Bob Kraft is going to allow the coach to be a general manager again because it didn't work out with Belichick at the very tail end of it. Elliot Wolf is the gentleman's name he's technically is a de facto general manager for the New England Patriots. He's the son of Ron Wolf, who used to be a general manager at Green Bay. I remember Ron Wolf was a pretty good general manager as well.
I just was eager to find out whether he's bringing his own players in and he can't manage his own players. So, I just feel he better clean up his language.
Absolutely. And call Mike Tomlin or call Dan Campbell. They'll help him out, especially Mike Tomlin, because Mike Tomlin has had to deal with that Pittsburgh media for all the time that he's been there. And literally every year.
About the media is about him handling his business inside that locker room.
I agree.
The media going to do their thing and say what they say, but boy, and also if they know they can get up under your skin, they going to throw him those type of questions too to see if it rattles him.
Exactly.
So if he's a guy who going to let some small talk get him out of his comfort zone and say something that he shouldn't, he better get it ready to go for a long ride, because that's just the way things are when it comes to this.
You've reached the end of another episode of the DC Stewart Sports Talk podcast. Be sure to connect with us at Facebook and Twitter.com. Your voice is important, so head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Catch our next episode.